this episode of Freedom Hub's Working Group. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with Charles Froman. We are being sponsored by the Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom, which you can get to by going to your-mp.com. We're definitely the disruptors intersection. I had to say that twice fast. And you'll see today is no exception to that rule. We have a number of other things that we're engaged in. So just be aware we have a show also today at 7. This is about the free market when it comes to patients and doctors in the medical profession. Equally interesting area to be aware of. These are the links to catch the archives. And again, we want you to visit the main website. It's real simplistic, your-mp.com. So it's hard to miss. Let's take a look at it. When you get over there, you'll get to the main page, a lot of good drop downs and things to look at over time. You'll see under the home page, there's a webinar tab, which is about today. And then also continuing the conversation, which is about tomorrow. Because after we speak with the guests, you'll probably want to follow up with that person. So here's your chance to do so. When you come over here, you'll see all the people we've been have those attendees and presenters, and you'll be able to click on here and connect with them and learn more about what they're doing and so on. Also under the Freedom tab, you'll see Fighting for Our Freedom. This is where we broach all the key issues that you want to take action on, some action items here, and then a growing list of organizations that are fighting for freedom for all of us, which is a big benefit. So, but on that note, let's dig into where we go onto the webinars. So when you click on the hover of the homepage again and click on webinars, you get at this tab. First, there's a little breakdown of what we're doing, and then each individual person is focused on here. And then here's the important part. When you come on down here are the links. So again, you come to your-mp.com, click on webinars, and to scroll down and you'll see the various links. Here, like examples, Brighteon. This is a good one because the layout's quite good. And you'll see there's a wealth of people that we've been working with. There's some really great videos. I mean, you can go back from quite back in time, and they're all really important and they're all quite good. So explore away. But on that note, let's dig into what today's agenda is going to be. And this is where Charles is going to jump in here a little bit and give us a nice intro on our guest, Gary Hoover.
Gladly, Jeff and Gary, welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you speak about entrepreneurship and the values therein that are so needed to rise out of the past year's chaos and hysteria. I met Gary in 2005-ish. I think that's the year when I ended up helping Whole Foods CEO John Mackey and education entrepreneur Michael Strong form Flow, the first name for what now is called conscious capitalism. And Gary was one of the attendees recruited by somebody. And over the course of that weekend, a bunch of us ended up at his personal library, a warehouse with 50,000 books. And he was so excited as he took us around showing these great tomes that he had collected, because his life has been about mastering the art of business success. And it's not just business success, it's success in any kind of organization that seeks to add value or solve problems. And he has become a real popular teacher with the youth. He was an entrepreneur in residence at UT Austin, University of Texas, where he knew my aunt, Claudia Chittister, who taught information research there for business intelligence. And it's kind of cool that he knows my aunts down in Austin. He was a young fan of business, and by the time before he was 20, he had visited a lot of the corporate headquarters of the Fortune 500 companies, trying to find out what separates winners from losers. And he studied at University of Chicago under Milton Friedman. He started his own bookstore that was bought up by Barnes and Noble. He had his own business intelligence company, Hoovers.com, bought out by Dun & Bradstreet. He's run Hoover Academy that teaches courses in entrepreneurship. And he's also had failures. So, I think most good entrepreneurs will teach you that failure is probably more important than success, to kind of have life push you in the direction where you add value and stop trying to beat your head against the wall. And where he beat his head against the wall was with travel agencies, which is something my mom was into before she passed away long ago. Just the market wouldn't support him. And then he was trying to help museums get more traffic. And he had this idea of story stores to have for-profit museums. And that's another area I'm sure he spoke to my aunts a lot in Austin about, because, you know, my family has some art in its background with Paul Fontaine. One of his nice quotes in his bio is the experience economy. And that reminds me of what Peter Drucker wrote about a lot. So I really hope he gets into that, because that makes entrepreneurship sound, frankly, more sexy. I think you need to have a motivating factor to get the young folks and today's folks bored in their cubicles to try entrepreneurship. And the experience economy is a phrase I really like. He maintains always a list of 100 concepts for people that want good ideas. And so with that, Jeff, I think we'll let Gary kind of give his soliloquy. Just filibuster away, Gary, for a while. What's on your mind? And then we'll open it for Q&A. So think of your questions, and then there's in the reactions button, you can click that and see where to click that raise hand icon and ask a question. There you go, Jeff.
All right. That was a great intro. All right, Gary, I'm going to give you the floor here.
Hey. Well, thank you, Charles and Jeff. It's great to be here. I have to tell you, you can see an Amazon box behind me. I am broadcasting live from my beautiful Kia Soul in Flatonia, Texas. We had a record rainfall. I think we got 6 or 7 inches in 6 hours last night, and blew out the lightning struck the Wi-Fi tower in town. And so I'm broadcasting on my tablet in my car in my backyard, right behind the feed mill for the local egg company. It's a rural town out here about an hour southeast of Austin. But it's great to be here and meet all of you. So a little on my background. I grew up in a General Motors factory town, Anderson, Indiana. Town of 60,000 people, 27,000 work for General Motors. It's one of their biggest, I think their biggest facility in America outside of the state of Michigan. And I'm sitting in the classroom, and the teachers are talking about leadership and management styles, about kings and queens and generals and governors and presidents, and, you know, who won what battle in the Civil War and who lost, and why did the strategies that worked and didn't work, how they led their approach to leadership, why people followed them or didn't follow them, all that kind of jazz. And I don't know, well, this is all fascinating, you know. And what about General Motors? They're kind of the gorilla or elephant in the room, or whatever metaphor you want to use. And the teachers would say, oh, they make Chevrolet, Pontiac, Buick, Cadillac, GMC truck, Frigidaire. I say, no, I know all that. But, you know, who started it? Why did they start it? Who runs it today? Are they smart or are they stupid? Today, General Motors has 0 employees, down from 27,000 in my old hometown. So it turned out to be even more important than I thought, but nobody can answer my questions. And it was driving me nuts. I'm in a newsstand. My big sister's looking at the horse and dog magazines. My big brother's looking at the car and airplane magazines. And I discover Fortune, the great business magazine. And every year, every summer, it just came out recently, spring or summer, they list the 500 biggest companies in America, the Fortune 500. That issue was on the newsstand. General Motors was the largest company in the world, almost twice as big as any other company on earth. It was the most profitable, really the greatest, the best run major organization like that. And they were number 1 on the Fortune list. And here was a magazine that was trying to ask the same questions I was asking about these companies. And there were 499 other companies, most of which I'd never heard of, you know. So I went running to my parents and said, man, you got to get me a subscription to this magazine. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And, you know, and they said, oh, you weird kid, you know, why don't you go play basketball like a normal Indiana kid? But got my subscription, and 2 months later, I entered the 7th grade. So that means it's now my 58th year of reading Fortune magazine. And I've gone back and acquired virtually all the issues to its beginning when it started in February of 1930, assembled this giant library. Actually, the minority, less than half of it is about business. Art, architecture, history, geography are the largest sections, but pretty much every nonfiction subject. It's a reference library, probably close to 60,000 books now. Very difficult to move, I must say, and a lot of Amazon boxes. but led to fascination with big business and how do they start and everything. And then as the years rolled on, I became fascinated by retailing. That's really my real love. I love studying every industry, and then I went on to a life of working for big retail companies. And as I worked in retailing, I also began to see, well, the fun is in the entrepreneurship, in the startup, or at least for some of us it is. And so I became more and more interested in entrepreneurship. And of course, General Motors started entrepreneurially, and Ford Motors certainly started entrepreneurially. Walter Chrysler created the Chrysler Company. I wrote his biography on one of our websites. And that's just led to a life of studying entrepreneurship. I've been to 45 countries, 49 states. I've given, probably 2,000 talks to entrepreneurship clubs and also corporate executives and all that. But I'm a real believer in entrepreneurship. And if you read the headlines today, you would kind of think big business is evil and out to overpower us and destroy us and gobble us all alive. And small business and entrepreneurship are God's gift to society and are just wonderful. Like they're just two whole different things. And they aren't. All these big businesses started as small business. Now there's a range. They got this nonsense these days with unicorns where I'm going to create a company worth $1 billion. Give me a couple of weeks and I'll get it done. Bunch of BS, But you do have people venture back and everything that are in a hurry and want to get big fast. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you also have, Michael Dell starting in his college dorm room, John Mackey, Whole Foods Market starting with one little store in Austin. Hewlett and Packard in their garage, and those things still go on every day, and restaurant chains almost always start off with one location, and then there's 2, and then there's 3, and then there's 30, and then there's 300, or whatever rate fits. And so it's really a spectrum. And I've written an article before I forget. So I have 2 websites. One's called hooversworld.com, and that has everything I write. And if you ever want to reach me, you can just hit the contact button there. I answer all my own emails, and I'm pretty fast at it. And the other one that I focus most of my energy on is AmericanBusinessHistory.org. And we don't learn the lessons of the past. We don't study business history enough. Harvard Business School has a good business history section, but like University of Texas and University of Chicago, the 2 schools closest to my heart, neither one even offers a business history class. There is no MBA program in the United States that requires you study business history, whereas in most fields, sciences and medicine, law for sure, you got to understand the context, the history, and you learn from the greats of the past. It's the best way to understand entrepreneurship is study these greats. So I urge you to go to AmericanBusinessHistory.org. If you know any high school students, this summer we're having a essay contest, $3,000 first prize. Just go write up the history of a local business, and all the specs and the rules and all that are on the website. It's easy to find. It says essay contest in bright orange. But in any case, teaching about entrepreneurship. And I wrote one of my posts, you'll find it on Hoover's World. And a lot of our stuff is also on the website of the Archbridge Institute, archbridgeinstitute.org. I have I think I call it Entrepreneurial Thinking Made Easy or Made Simple, something like that. But all these organizations and individuals, I believe, are on a spectrum, probably a normal distribution. And way out in one tail, you have people that are born bureaucrats that couldn't start something if you paid them to, they just are bureaucrats. But very few people are way out there in that tail. The other tail, when I was working with students at the business school at University of Texas, I would make a note, what I call it, FE, fundamentally entrepreneurial. And that's probably 3 or 4% of all the people, including entrepreneurs that I've worked with. And they're people that just couldn't do anything else, could never work for anybody else. They're impossible. And they'll probably fail and try all kinds of stuff. But sooner or later, they'll probably succeed just because they'll just keep trying until they break through on something. But they're just, it's like, in many cases, they're the children of immigrants, American kids raised in the U.S., but the parents are immigrants. Mom owns a motel and dad owns a convenience store, And so going to law school or getting an MBA or working for Goldman Sachs or getting a job with the government, it never came up. All the rest of us, myself included, and I've started 9 companies of different sizes and things, 2 successes and a fair number of failures. All of us are somewhere in the middle of that normal distribution, one side or the other. And organizations likewise, startup companies tend to be highly entrepreneurial. They better be. And then as a company gets more policies and procedures and evolves, it becomes less entrepreneurial. They become process oriented, which they need. And you get to a point, when if you're running General Motors, you've got whatever, 100,000 or more jobs, depending on you and all those families. And you've got all your resources and assets and all your stockholders. So you've got a lot invested in like defending your fortress, is the way I phrase it. The entrepreneurs are the ones on the outside, the Elon Musk, that are attacking your fortress. But you get more worried about protecting what you've got than expanding and taking on the world. And then nonprofit organizations, and they cover a broad range. I've seen some very entrepreneurial, some incredibly bureaucratic, but they tend to be more bureaucratic than for-profit organizations. They, I think, and I've been very involved. I lost all my money on my third venture, but before I did, I gave enough to my beloved University of Chicago. There's a dormitory up there, a Hoover House dormitory. So I do believe in nonprofits, but their greatest drawback is that they don't have the profit motive to incentivize them to focus on their customers. So many nonprofits, hospitals, universities, museums, or whatever, they're more focused on their donors and sounding good or winning awards for having a beautiful building than they are, okay, this person just paid $5 to walk into this museum. How do we make their life better? And then you go on all the way to government. But even government agencies, like down here in Texas, our driver's license stuff, and everything's just far better than the ones I experienced I lived in New York, Chicago, Indiana, Illinois. So you can be more entrepreneurial. And when we talk about entrepreneurship, I really believe it's a state of mind, that it isn't just like a department within a business school. I think that's kind of sad that it's seen that way. Because we need entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinkers in government, in museums, in hospitals, in healthcare. It's such an enormous part of our society, our economy. We need entrepreneurial thinkers everywhere. And it's a way of viewing the world. It's a way of continually observing people, understanding people, human behavior. Sociology and psychology are at least as important, if not more important, than like marketing and finance. Well, marketing really is psychology and sociology, social psychology, I guess, if you get into it. But and always seeking a way to make somebody's life better, whether it's a very tiny thing. I see ads for better underwear and shirts you don't have to tuck in and things like that. Probably not. I'm up to about 300 ideas on my list, and you're probably not going to find one of those kind of things on my list. But hey, if they work, somebody's willing to pay for them, they've made somebody's life a little better, all the way up to Elon Musk, putting us on Mars, or trying to totally electrify our automobile system, or lead the way and all that. I wrote the biography of Jim Casey. His guy is like, I forget, 17 or 18 years old. He borrowed $100. He started a thing. It's called UPS. They have over 100,000 drivers, each they probably average over $100,000 a year apiece with fully paid health insurance. They deliver an amazing service at a low price globally. It's the largest and most valuable transportation company on earth, bigger than any airline, any trucking company, any railroad, anything in the world. It's just amazing. It was just this kid, and he worked till his 90s. His whole life was devoted to it. And he's one of the great unsung entrepreneurs that I like to learn from and study. And finding opportunities, it comes down, there's a great book called The Innovator's DNA. If you want to come up with ideas, that is the book. There have been all these books written. I'm pretty critical. Most business books should have been an article. Some shouldn't have been printed at all. But there's a lot of nonsense, in my not so humble opinion, out there. And the key is 99% of the time, or whatever, it's finding two things that everybody sees every day they've never put together before. Einstein said something like, the secret to productive thought is combinatorial play. Steve Jobs said, it's creativity is just putting two things together. So my first organization, really successful in Bookstop, we took the bookstore chain idea. B. Dalton and Walden Books were two giant companies at the time, and combined it with the Toys R Us idea. which is a very different approach to retailing. Great big stores outside of the malls, open long hours, lower prices, incredible assortment, many more different items than the old toy stores carried. I took the Toys R Us idea, and my friends and I, and the traditional bookstore idea, and put them together and created the Book Superstore. And Barnes & Noble bought us 7 years later. We were already like fourth biggest in the country, stretched from Miami to San Diego in our first 7 years. And venture capitalists fired me. I can tell you all kinds of stories about the life of an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur. And Barnes & Noble bought it. It's how they got into the big bookstore business. And I think Borders, great outfits too, came along a little. Their first store was older than ours, but I think we had 12 stores time they opened their second store. So we were the first real chain. Hoover's business information company. There are all these dusty tomes that cost thousands of dollars. You had to go to the library to use Moody's and Standard & Poor's. And I knew mass book selling, and the idea was making information about companies more readily available. Now there, a friend of mine really saw the internet coming better than I did, an old University of Chicago buddy, and I turned the keys over to him, and he became the CEO, and he converted from publishing books about business information about big companies to an online service, and that became a big success and went public and so on. But just seeing two things that everybody sees every day and combining them in a new way is key. Some of the other keys, I think, to entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial thinking, no matter what the field or what you're trying to achieve, you have to have an independent mind. I remember one of the great lessons studying, I was fortunate, four of my teachers later won Nobel Prizes, University of Chicago economics and business people, and George Stigler, Milton Friedman, Robert Fogel, and Eugene Fama. But one of the lessons of it from a guy like Friedman is don't believe me. I don't care what they say about me or what prizes they give me. Don't believe me. Read the evidence. Read my case that I Milton Friedman, make, and read what the other side makes. Read Karl Marx. In fact, I was in college in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, and there were Marxists in the classroom, as I know there are today. And and some of mine tell you, had IQs that were probably higher than Milton Friedman. I mean, really, really bright people. And they would get up and make their case. Milton Friedman would always win the debate. And why was it? It was because he understood Marx better than they did. He had spent more time reading and thinking about Karl Marx than any Marxist he ever met. So, but make up your own mind. Read all the evidence. Be very wary of the traditions and the way things have been done in the past. Doesn't mean they're wrong. I worked for 3 Fortune 500 companies before I built the courage to start my own. And especially looking for big retail chains. And about half of what I learned there and saw at these big retail companies, I said, well, gosh, I'll never do that again. That's crazy, And half of what I heard, I said, whoa, they got this nailed. They understand how to model the financial model of the return on investment of a new store. They got that nailed, and I'm going to keep those spreadsheets, and I'm going to modify them and improve them for my bookstore chain. But you've got to weigh it on your own. I see so many young people that I say, well, you should go visit Jakarta. I mean, I love travel. I love seeing the world and all these different cultures. Oh, no, my friend went there and they didn't like it. Well, you can't let somebody else tell you what not to like or what to like. Food, restaurants, And if you aren't trying new things, well, you're not an entrepreneurial thinker, if you aren't willing to experience more stuff. So having your own independence of thought. Risk. People talk about entrepreneurs are gamblers. That's BS. Entrepreneurs do everything in their power to mitigate risk, to lower risk. And the reality is that entrepreneurs, because they've made up their own mind, they see risk differently. In that post I wrote, you'll see I tell a story in there about, so I was one of the youngest vice presidents at this big department store company. I was 30 years old, and I decided I'm going to go start this bookstore chain. And my mother's like, are you nuts? Come on, you just got a raise. You're making way more than you should at 30 years of age. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. They seem to like you. You love the work, which was true. And you're going to go leave. And the venture capitalists have already told me, oh, this is never going to work. You can never take on B. Dalton and Walden Books and all this jazz. Well, I knew the department store industry inside out. I was a department store industry expert, and I knew that industry had peaked. That the great risk was staying with it. On the other hand, I'd also studied all my demographics, all the government data. I studied how many books people bought at what ages and what incomes. I knew what was going to, and I was trying to foresee the next 20 years, and I pretty accurately did that the 80s and 90s would be a great time to be selling books in the United States and really around the world. And so I was not taking a risk, you know. General Motors said, play it safe, don't risk on electric cars. Well, playing it safe was the riskiest thing you could do. Elon Musk saw things differently. So it really is about you develop your own sense of what's risky. The people ask me all the time, how do you know when to take the plunge? That's the hardest thing. It's like, okay, when you jump off the diving board and start your business, because I mentor and teach a lot of people that are already in a corporate career. And, you know, you can get the golden hooks into you and you're getting the options and everything else. And it makes it harder and harder every year to leave. But a lot of it is, I believe in doing your homework and becoming the greatest expert you can in the industry you're interested in and picking your industry. The idea, oh, if you can run one business, you can run any kind of business. That's nonsense. There's like 1 in a million people that are like that. Walt Disney couldn't have built Federal Express. Fred Smith couldn't have built Estee Lauder Cosmetics. Estee Lauder couldn't have built a bank, you know. And so go to industry trade shows, read trade journals, join the trade association, read everything that's online from all those sources, learn the jargon, all that jazz. But the real thing is that an entrepreneurial mind has total confidence in their ability to assemble what they need to get. In other words, like if you go to a big company strategy meeting, their main thinking is going to be, what do we have and how can we best use it, right? So we got all these factories, or we got 4,000 Walmart stores, or we got patents on prescription drugs, or what are our assets, and then how do we use them? An entrepreneur starts with nothing except what's in their head. And then they got to figure out, well, what do I need to get? I have this dream, I have this vision, I have this passion for somehow providing a good or a service to people. And so what do I need to get that done? Do I need capital? Maybe I need a lot. Maybe I need a little. Maybe I need a little now and a lot later, you know? Do I need to understand chemistry in some fields, you know, rocket science if you're Elon Musk? Okay, then I can either go learn it or I can go find somebody who has that knowledge and then hire them. They don't have to go on a payroll. They can be a consultant. There were times when my lawyer or my accountant was every bit as important as senior executives. There are a million ways, you know, financially, economically structured at that. But you have to have the confidence that whatever it takes, I'm going to open a store so I can get a sales tax permit from the state, and I can lease a building, and I can figure out where to buy fixtures, and I can figure out who are the suppliers. And I'm going to open a restaurant. What's the phone number for Cisco, SYSCO, the great restaurant supply company, you know? And you got to have this confidence that you can take on anything. And that also means you aren't afraid. You aren't intimidated, you know, by all this. You know, when I talk to people who aren't entrepreneurs or trying to talk their friends or relatives out of being, you know, there's a quote in one of my things. Berkeley Rice was the guy who made it. Something like, visionaries are visionary in large part because of the great many things they do not see. You don't see obstacles. You don't believe the naysayers. You have to be careful. Listen to everybody. I have a little grid system. When somebody give me their thoughts on my business idea, I'd look at, okay, first of all, do they like it or not like it? You know, like a 2-way grid, a 4-way box or whatever. And then do they have a grounds for not liking and not liking it? So like if my beloved late mother said, that's a crazy idea, or she loved it, either way, well, she was not really a business expert. Her other skills far outweighed those. On the other hand, I'd be on an airplane and somebody who'd spent their life in retailing tells me my idea is great or that it's awful. That gets a different weighting. And if they think it's awful, I've really got to go and sit down and think about why I disagree with them. And I have to be very careful because the other thing is, man, all your friends, if you get in the position where all your friends are relatives say, that's a wonderful idea, it's a great idea, oh, man, that's scary, you know? Most great ideas are laughed out of the room when they're first brought up. So if everybody's telling you it's the best idea they ever heard, they wish they thought of it, be very, very careful. If they all say you're crazy, you're much more likely to be on. I mean, just history proves that. See, I got a list here. Make sure, see, I didn't cover other stuff. Observation, developing the skill of observation. My class is in entrepreneurial thinking. I take them all out to a shopping mall, and they get assignments like in 30 minutes, count 100 different people what kind of shoes they're wearing or what kind of watches they're wearing, if they're wearing a watch at all these days. Do they have piercings or not? One poor group has to go, or team or whatever, has to go and estimate the annual revenues of every tenant of the food court and which ones are doing better, and then make a guess as to why. Somebody else has to go out and compare the types of cars behind the JCPenney store, there are still some left, and the Nordstrom store. So kind of the lower end and the higher end store in the mall where we were dealing. I take poor engineers, and they have to compare the cosmetics departments at Macy's, Nordstrom's, and Penny's, because they've never set foot in the cosmetics department, and it freaks them out. But you got to overcome those fears, But so observation, experimentation, being willing to try things. I mean, the only time failure is bad is when you don't learn from it, because you're going to fail a lot, and you have to be willing to. But you also you control that. Okay, here I'm taking a chance. Here's my maximum risk. Here's the worst thing that can happen if it goes wrong. See if there's anything else here on my little list that I want to make sure and cover. I think I've covered most of them. You've got to be able to communicate your ideas. Above all else, entrepreneurs are salesmen, saleswomen, salespeople, whatever, because you are always selling your ideas to your bankers, to your customers, to your employees, to your investors, to your spouses and significant others, to your kids. And the more selling you do, intelligent selling and doing some listening, but you've got to take that passion, that vision of yours, and be able to communicate it. And you don't have to have that skill to begin with. I've now made, like 2,000 speeches all over the world. I used to be scared to death to speak in public. But once I found out, if I stick to something I know about and don't take notes and don't rehearse it, that's my own style, is I learned just to look people in the eye and talk. I never use slides and PowerPoint, all that nonsense, or very rarely, But you got to find your own style. And if you study the great entrepreneurs, I've written about 25 of these biographies of them that are on our American Business History website and the Archbridge Institute website. And man, they are all over the board, from straight arrows to crazy men, some women, Estee Lauder, people of different races. Everyone has a unique path, and yet they still share some of the same obstacles and some of the same attributes. And they certainly are driven and have this passion, this energy. They're persistent. They don't give up easily, but you've heard all those attributes before. But I think that covers enough to maybe, I don't know if there are questions.
That's got some thoughts going, I would bet, for sure, Gary. One question I would start off with is, do you think that this passion that you're describing that entrepreneurs possess will win out over the way the schools have seemed to push everyone to just know the answers to questions and not necessarily how to think, but just know this information and you'll succeed?
I mean, the thing is, you say win out. I mean, I don't know about, doing a head count, what percent, but let's face it, it doesn't take a majority of the people being entrepreneurs to have a highly entrepreneurial society. Most of the people I've met in my life did not start a company, but those 10,000 that I do know that started companies are the ones that have created all the jobs in the world, that have given meaning to all these other people, that have given them iPhones and Zoom and automobiles and rocket ships. So it doesn't have to be everybody. And come on, when I speak to a high school class, all I'm looking for is 1 or 2 or 3 people that their eyes light up, or that follow up and send me an email or ask me a good question. Because when somebody does that, then they can have all my time they want. I've got some former students that I email daily, others I never hear from again, but some stay in, or I'll get ones that'll say, I heard you speak 23 years ago and you said this, and I wanted to ask you about that. It doesn't take everybody, but you can see it in their eyes. I mean, so many of the students in the public school system are just bored. What they're being taught doesn't seem to connect to their life. And it's just sad. I mean, it's just like I love math. I use algebra in my life. And yet I'm seeing in a lot of algebra classes, well, how am I ever going to use this? Well, let me in the room and I'll show you. I'll show you how I used it to figure out where to put a bookstore, how you make it relevant, how you make it interesting. Great teaching is an art form. And how do you share your passion for what you're teaching? But the environment is tough in the public schools. And I always really believed in public schools and everything, but I can see it teaching classes. And you go overseas and you can see where there's a lot more discipline and they're wearing uniforms and they're going 6 days a week and the kids are more engaged. And I think the average American suburban kid gets a good education at their public school system, or certainly can. But I do think the rise in homeschooling and alternative and private schools and vouchers and things like that, educational choice is really important to the future of the country.
Hello, Gary. How are you doing? This is the fish man. How are you? Hey. Gary, let's talk about ecosystem. One of the great statistics here in America is, look, a lot of great companies in the last 40 years since you left Chicago and I left Northwestern has been founded in 3 regions. We've done a great job in Austin in creating the ecosystem for certainly high-tech startups. And Silicon Valley has done it all. And Route 128 has contributed. But most regions have not contributed in terms of companies that really create wealth, jobs, and those kind of things. Can you talk some about the impact of support system where it's an accountants who understand, marketing people who understand, the science that understands, for high growth, high tech kind of companies? And I know Gary has spoken to my class at least 15 or 20 times. And I know that innovation is innovation. Talk some about the ecosystem and why is it that the Southern states can't get it right in terms of creating enterprises? And that's my undergraduate, go Tigers, go LSU. What is going on in Illinois where everybody is moving? Why can't Northwestern and Chicago interact with and create the kind of ecosystem that we've done in Texas and that Stanford has done in Silicon Valley and MIT, not Harvard, has done on the East Coast? Thank you.
Hey, John, thanks for the question. Always great to hear from you. And my friend John Butler is an expert in entrepreneurship and teaches at the McCombs Business School and has done a lot of work on immigrant minority entrepreneurship. You can look up books by John Sibley Butler. John, actually, I have kind of mixed feelings on that. I mean, when you talk about Austin and Route 128 in Boston and Silicon Valley, I mean, they are amazing. You could also, in health sciences, add in the research triangle, but you can also look at Seattle, which is an odd deal because it isn't that same kind of thing, but between Microsoft and Boeing, which is an incredible technological company, I don't know if there's much sharing between those two, but I do know that University of Washington and Boeing were tightly integrated. So part of the reason Boeing was so successful there was recruiting and paying for Mr. Boeing paid for a wind tunnel at the university. I just did some research on Boeing. I think to some degree, certainly the basic thing of, do you have accountants and lawyers who understand startups? Now, I moved to Austin. There used to be big 8 accounting firms. What's it down to now? The big 3 or big 4. But none of the big 8 had offices in Austin. And even when I needed to recruit an accountant, controller, finance people, I didn't advertise in the Austin paper. There were none there. I advertised in Dallas and Houston and convinced them to move to Austin. That's a lot easier to do now. The lawyers, I wanted to do blue sky laws, deals where you do private placements in different states to raise private capital in a startup. And the lawyers didn't know much about that outside of the oil and gas business. And I remember chiding a lawyer at the biggest law firm in town because I'd done more research than he had on it. Well, that was 1982. Well, it's all different now. It's all different now. And there's got to be 40 incubators and co-working spaces in Austin, maybe more. It's like entrepreneurs grow on trees. I could go to an event every day, maybe 2 a day in Austin, open events and all this jazz at all these incubators and Tech Ranch and Capital Factory and all that. But I do see that other cities. I mean, I know the University of Chicago has really gotten some stuff cooking. Their business school, they're having entrepreneurship programs. I see it in St. Louis. Washington University. I also, just if you look at Forbes magazine list of the most entrepreneurial cities and everything, there are towns you never dreamed of that are popping up on that list. So I think everybody's trying to hit that critical mass, because let's face it, Austin's still pretty far behind Silicon Valley. So what's the total market cap of all the high-tech companies come out of Austin compared to the market cap out of just Sequoia and those boys alone? Silicon Valley is really a unique and extreme deal. And people around the world. I mean, I saw it in Dubai, I've seen it in Singapore, down in Monterey, Mexico, you know, John, they have a tech center. I think everybody's trying how successful they can really be. Do you hit that critical mass? And then the other thing is, most of what we're talking about is tech, and that's great. But, you know, as a retail, hey, if you're in a restaurant business, probably the best places in America are Dallas and New York. If you're in the fashion business, it's Dallas, LA, and New York. If you're in the music business, you know, and in Miami, it plays a role in all this, you know. You're in the import-export business. UPS, they were what, based in Seattle, and then based in New York, and then based in Connecticut, and then based in Atlanta. It doesn't matter where they're based, you know, they're all there at any given time. More big companies are moving out of New York City to Texas than anything else. I did a recent article about that, the change in where corporate headquarters have been over the last 50 years. But I also, you know, as much as Austin has got this great energy, and I'm a real believer in Austin, I love the city, I wrote an article also about why I thought if you're really looking at the future, Fort Worth and San Antonio are the places to really watch. And if I were moving to Texas now, I might go to one of those for a number of reasons, but cost of living being a major one. Dallas-Fort Worth will pass up Chicago to become the third biggest metro area in America in the next, by late 2040s, it looks like. Big first change in top 3 in 100 years when LA passed up Chicago to become number 2. There's a lot of dynamism in a lot of places. Utah, you know, low population base and everything, but man, they appear over and over again on innovation lists and stuff I see. So, but those lawyers and the accountants, those are in all those places. All of them now are creating incubators and all that jazz. And with the internet, it's easier to share the information. So I'm not sure. You know, in some ways, things are becoming more distributed geographically and more available in more places. But you still can't deny the water cooler effect and the country club effect or the Sand Hill Road effect if you were a venture capitalist, you know, in Silicon Valley. So I think it's kind of a blend.
Thank you.
Very good. Jim, I see your hand was up.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
You can't see me though. Let me change that. Hold on. Where am I? Here I am. Hey, Gary, thank you. I love your enthusiasm, everything you're bringing to this. Charles, thanks for putting this on and introducing me to my future partner. No, actually, I've got you're talking about museums, and so that's one project I'm working on, which actually can make money and help people. That was the first thing, to walk in the door, which brings me to my question. And I worked in that industry a bit. I was just going to mention something. So I was in the IMAX Life Sciences Center industry for a while. And it seems that the whole industry got co-opted. In other words, the idea was to put these science centers out there to educate the public, to serve as, you know, resources for policymakers, that sort of thing. And some of the directors I talked to said, you know, that kind of got pushed aside. It's ticket sales, it's get people into the IMAX theater. We want the dinosaur exhibit instead of something that might, let's say, talk about what's in our food today, or a better food supply, or organic versus conventional farming. Things that we always, you know, we think about and talk about. But so that's where I'm going. But my question is, I guess related to that, and American business history, I feel like we're at a critical turning point. You know, you got a lot of people still, and I work with the Wharton Club and right now putting together a summit, innovation summit like you're talking about.
Cool.
And it's very focused on here's what's going to happen in the future. And then on the other side, I see all of these people, and we'll put libertarians in that group, you know, like breaking away, and doctors saying, no, the old way isn't working. We need something different. And I'm just curious, how much of that are you feeling or fits into how you see a change in entrepreneurship, or is there going to be more value-added products and businesses that maybe don't put, like, we're out to make a killing, but we're out to help people make a living, you know, or something to that effect?
Yeah, I'm essentially old school guy, you know. I mean, a phrase I've used in many of my classes is there's nothing new in business that matters, because, and I even have sometimes discussions with my conscious capitalism friends, and because you'll kind of get this riff that, hey, this is a whole new approach to business, looking at all the stakeholders, you know, looking at our customers and our community and everything. Hey, read my biography piece on Robert Wood. He was the man who took over Sears Roebuck, became the head of Sears Roebuck in the 1920s, and convinced them to start building retail stores, not just be a mail order catalog, and then created the biggest retail chain on earth. Amazing man, essentially in control of Sears for about 30 years or so. But Robert Wood, hey, everything he said was right out of the Conscious Capitalism book. Everything Peter Drucker taught in so many ways, right out of it. But Wood talked about how you got to put the customers first.
Yeah.
Always got, and then employees and your community and your suppliers. And if you do that, you don't have to worry about your stockholders. So to some degree, the shareholder first, or there've always been let's get rich quick people. There have always been, and there always will be. Maybe they got a little bigger market share since the 1980s. Maybe not. It's not the way you build great businesses. It's not the way UPS was built. It's not the way Apple was built. It's not the way General Motors was built. Now, later on, they got some of that bad disease and went downhill. You know, now they're trying to rebuild the enterprise after a bankruptcy. It's not the way Walmart was built. It's not the way Dollar General was built. No, I think the most fundamental things are timeless, and the great entrepreneurs understand that. It's about putting the customer first. The techniques change every day. Whether you should advertise using the telegraph or using Facebook, that can change like by the hour, you know. But the tactics, yes, always changing. But the fundamental principles of putting your customers first, caring about the quality of your product, obsessing about it, that's timeless.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, we're going to have time to squeeze in one more question here. So let me see if anybody has one in particular there. One thing, when you made a comment before, though, it goes to that one great line in Atlas Shrugged where they're questioning each other, and the Reardon says that we are the engine of the world. That is just that, like you said, it's just that small percentage that really make everything happen. Everybody else becomes a worker or a builder on of that idea and so on. So it is interesting to see how that takes place. But it is that one, like you said, that one person that gets sparked in there is the one. Look, here's Charles. He's got his hand up.
All right, Charles.
Hi there. Maybe a quick healthcare discussion. We have some other health entrepreneurs on here. Not sure, Jeff, if Dr. Wallen talked about his sincere effort to help the cash pay market. That's something that maybe you can discuss what we're up to around that effort and disruption, and want to get Mr. Hoover's response to that. Jeff?
Sorry, what was that? Yeah, I got it. I think it muted a second. What did you say?
Do you want to talk about, maybe invite Dr. Wallen and maybe join him yourself on the cash pay revolution and get Mr. Hoover's response on health disruption?
Oh, that would be a great one. I mean, that is a pretty interesting phenomenon. It kind of got me started. I'll give a little 2-second history and let him jump in. But, you know, I've been selling health insurance for many, many years. And, you know, you focus on, and small business owners are individuals. So that's all you care about. And when it came to doctors, was their name on the list of the PPO or the HMO. And that was about the extent of it. But then Obamacare showed up, the Affordable Care Act. And then suddenly these health share ministries became a prominent force because they were excluded from the act. And everybody's like, what do you mean? I can get excluded from this? How do I do it? And we started to build on that. But the difference was that many of them gave the money to you. So you had to go out and figure out what stuff costs. So they were forcing people to become cash shoppers for the first time ever. And lo and behold, they kind of liked it after a little while. But where we excelled was we created a helper person, because no one was going to understand it and how they need to research doctors. So we did it for the person, which they love to help, but they like this mechanism of it. And as it's begun to proliferate, now we're seeing, as a consequence of us doing these calls all these years, boy, I'll tell you, there are so many doctors and people popping out of the woodwork with some fantastic ideas to just take this thing and, take that crack in the barn door and burst it all the way open, because it's never going to get legislated or any of the rest of it if we've all sorted that out after a while. We just need to solve it ourselves. Have you been paying attention to that category in any way?
Actually, one of my 300 business ideas, and I had several meetings about 12 years ago, was basically about price transparency in the healthcare industry. And I know there are a lot of state laws and there are federal stuff going on, but it's a disaster out there. And I personally, as a student of Milton Friedman and the boys and everything, the only way for prices to come down is for customers to care about the prices. The worst thing you can do is say it's all free, because then nobody's going to care about the prices except for the providers who can raise their prices because nobody sees them. I was watching, it was TV ads. I think it was maybe for one of these psoriasis medicines, but one is heavily advertised with the singer on there and everything, heavily advertised on TV. Every few minutes you see it. And the guy, oh, my elbow, I have to wear long sleeve shirts because my elbows embarrass me. But now with this drug, so I went and looked it up, and I said, well, how much does that thing cost? And it's like $15,000 the first month, and then $10,000 a month for life, or something crazy. And then I go hang out with my local friends, and I say, how much do you think that drug costs? And, oh, $20, $10, 20, no, cost, resources out of our society. It's madness. So anything that can get the customer, even if they're only paying 5 or 10 or 15% of it, anything that can get people hooked up with the cost and aware of the prices and in a better position to make a decision. Because, man, for $10,000 a month, I would wear long sleeves if I was that guy. Now, I know there are serious cases of psoriasis and stuff that is a bigger issue, but those ads are appealing to the vanity, the cosmetic part of the market. And that's true of a lot. It's pharmaceutical ad after pharmaceutical ad, and they tell you about how you're going to go crazy and kill your relatives and die, in the small print, but they never mention the price, and what a way to waste resources. So anything and every aspect. I mean, you look at stuff. I spoke at a healthcare conference once with Goldman Sachs and everybody there, and the real experts, and they're saying, I said, the less regulated it is, the more innovative it is. So the most innovative field in medicine is veterinary medicine. Next most innovative is dentistry and LASIK. And Rand Paul talks on and on about this jazz. But hey, anything in that direction, because it's such a 10, 15% of the economy, and it's only going to grow. And it's global. It's not just the U.S. Japan's even older than we are. Healthcare is just such a phenomenal industry with phenomenal upside and huge growth potential. But where are the opportunities to really make it better? To really serve people. I feel the same way about financial services. Huge opportunities, but most of these banks are idiots if you think of them from an entrepreneurial viewpoint. Of putting the customer first, of being open long hours, or treating your customers right, and all the things that a Walmart has to do every day. Most of the big banks are disasters.
Jared, I was going to say, would you like to add a little bit to the commentary?
Sure, I'd love to. I think from the standpoint of a couple of comments, one would be, obviously medicine is hugely regulated, and I think that's one of the biggest barriers. One of the other barriers I see is as physicians are trained, they're basically, the entrepreneurial or that kind of that question everything I do or say, like you were describing of your mentor earlier, is beaten out of us, right? And we're told to do whatever our attending tells us or whatever the nurse tells us, or, we got to be team players and we got to be nice to everybody. And we're not to, question, what's told to us.
You mean the customers or the doctors believing that, or both?
I'm saying the physicians from that standpoint, but I think, you know, so I think that's a limitation for physician entrepreneurship, which I think is probably going to be the biggest need or driver of a potential healthcare revolution. But I guess my question would be then, is there any way that you see, other than essentially that direct care model, where basically you're cutting out the pharmas and the insurance and the hospitals and the government to some extent, and working directly with patients? Is there anything you see that you could potentially, you know, kind of otherwise solve for the current state of our industry?
Well, I don't know enough about the details and haven't studied it in enough depth to add much, but I would say that when you describe the doctors and the way they're trained, hey, the same's true of lawyers. You know, 90% of lawyers are not very entrepreneurial. They take the business that comes in the door. You know, they follow the rule book, and here, oh, you're going to do good. You join the big firm, and then maybe you go off on your own, or maybe you stay with the big firm and you have your niche specialty. But I've worked with enough lawyers, and I've actually spoken at law firm strategic planning meetings. I don't know, 2-3% of all lawyers are really entrepreneurs. I'm like, wow, you know, we could open an office in another city, and wow, you know, we could be a specialist. We could just do this kind of law, and we'd do better, and we'd have to give up some of your customers, of our customers, which is a gutsy move. You know, they all want to be generalists, but the money's always in the niches. You know, that's true in every industry. You know, it's finding that spot. You know, the insurance industry used to be Prudential, Metropolitan. They owned everything. Where's the growth? The growth is Aflac, Geico, USAA, people that found a niche. And that's pretty much true in every business. There's always room for one or two giants to do everything, an Amazon or a Walmart. But it's the five below and the Home Depot that, you know, have their specialties. So it will only take one Elon Musk-ish doctor, you know, one Jim Casey, the UPS guy, doctor, you know, who breaks the mold. And I've met some of them. I've met some of these people with their independent clinics, and one guy runs a giant operation in Houston, cash only, customers flying from all over the world, or hormone and health and wellness center. They're out there, and it only takes one with a bold enough vision and willingness. Because the thing is, in education and healthcare, you do have to take on the regulatory state, the state of the world being regulatory. And that's one reason I selected retailing. Because I love transportation. My first startup on a college campus was a charter bus company, but at that point there was an interstate commerce commission, and it was nuts. And I didn't want anything to do with it. I would still be in the charter bus business if it weren't for the fact the ICC existed then. But Jimmy Carter then did away with it, you know, and deregulated transportation. But by then it was too late. But because I studied retailing, I said, hey, wow, there's no limits in retailing. There is fundamentally no regulation. I mean, that's exaggeration. You know, you got to have food safety and everything. Well, let's face it, for a clothing store, you get a sales tax permit, you sign a lease, and you're in business, you know. And I love it. I love the competitive nature. So I think that, you know, everything starts small, you know, everything and everything goes uphill. You know, AT&T told Steve Jobs, nobody will ever use a telephone that you have to touch the front of it. IBM themselves said that there'll only be a need for 1,000 personal computers worldwide or something when they first heard about the idea. You got to roll uphill and find people with the guts and everything. But no, if it can be proven in one state, one city, new models. Hey, education with the COVID closed down and all those things that have gone on, you know, the homeschooling rates and the alternative education have really boomed in the last year. And this is their golden opportunity to really broaden that. So I think looking for the right opportunities, maybe you start in veterinary medicine or something, you know, and prove out some ideas and then transfer over to others, go into a field that's less regulated to test ideas. Shooting from the hip there.
Very good. Well, I have to say this was a very uplifting and inspiring day today. Oftentimes on this show, it's a little scary what we get to talk about. So this is a very positive and encouraging one. So I definitely want to thank you for spending some great time with us today.
Sure. You can't lose your optimism. You can't. I mean, I got all these friends that think the world's going to hell in a handbasket on the left and on the right and everywhere in between. It's funny because I'll be talking sometimes to some great entrepreneurs, great friends of mine, and they'll be saying, oh, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. Oh, I don't know. It's all over with. And I'll say, well, how do you feel about your company and how it's going to do the next 5 years? Oh, no. We're going to do great. We're going to do great, you know? So, hey, there's just no return on investment. There's no money in pessimism. It has no payoff. It's like envy and jealousy and all these emotions, worry that we all get, you know, that we're human, but man, there's just no return on investment in those. There's a big return on investment in optimism and energy and trying to do something good, trying to help people, you know, those things have payback, a payoff. And I'm not talking money. I mean, maybe money too, but for most great entrepreneurs, money, man, that's like the scoreboard. Everybody likes money. I lost all my money. I like when I had money. I'm happy now. You know, there are a lot of unhappy, wealthy people, but the real scoreboard is, you know, what do you contribute to society? And you somehow leave this world a better place when you leave it than you found it in any aspect. And, you know, we mentioned the entrepreneurs, how it's just a few. That's true. And I did say that, but it's also whatever. There are 1 million restaurateurs in America. It's people serving coconuts to their neighbors in Indonesia and Brazil, you know. Entrepreneurship is it's all around us, and you know, I live in a very Mexican American part of the world, and man, the energy, the drive of those people and of all the immigrants in second and third generation. But no, you gotta keep your optimism. It's just a waste of good, valuable, and limited human energy to get down about everything.
Excellent.